Hi there, welcome back for another episode of Dave's Desk. If you were with us yesterday, you'll have heard our reflection on the end of the period of exile, and that sort of closed out our time in the Old Testament, which means we're starting to look at the New Testament today, which means we're starting with the story of Jesus' birth. And the pattern that we've had in these reflections is that I recount fairly loosely a Bible passage that you may or may not be aware of, so that we're all sort of aware of the basic fundamentals of what the Bible says about this situation, and then I reflect upon it. And I'm kind of thinking about the story of Jesus' birth, thinking, how much should I be telling you the story of Jesus' birth? I think it's one of those parts of the Bible that you literally, if you spent 30 seconds in Sunday school at some point, you know the story of Jesus' birth fairly well. And even if all you've done is watched Christmas films on the telly, you're going to be mildly aware of the story. So I apologise if I'm telling you something you already know, but I thought just worth drawing out a few elements of that account, that story from Matthew and Luke's Gospel, to help us think about the way in which God treats us and relates to us. And it struck me just the way God picks the unlikely through the story of his coming to earth. So if you think the Old Testament is this long, thousands of years long narrative telling the story of how God chooses a people and shapes them and anoints their king to serve in his name, and promises that this king will have an heir that will sit on the throne forever, you can see why you would expect that king to come in that sort of powerful way, where the king would rise up and rule the nation with, the sword, rather than die at the hands of the oppressor. But all the way through the way God reveals his son to the people, it's always in this unexpected way. Jesus isn't born in Jerusalem, the centre of everything. He's born in Bethlehem, like his great ancestor David. Not the strongest or most obvious place to have a king born, but there he was. Jesus isn't born to a family of particular standing, but to a young woman who's just gotten engaged to someone else. Jesus isn't, he's not first. His arrival isn't declared in the palaces. His arrival is declared on the hilltop to the shepherds, who are about as low down the social pecking order as it was possible to get and still be seen as a reasonable human being. And all through this, God chooses the unlikely, the seemingly unworthy, as the place to reveal himself. There's something really powerful in the way that God chooses to defy expectations in order to reveal himself as the author of creation. And I think it's worth us reflecting that perhaps our expectations are still wrong about the way in which God is seeking to act in the world. So we might have the expectations that God would show up in a thing we're doing in church. So I'd planned out, I'd met with all the leaders of our 4 churches here, and we planned out the year. We've been really efficient. We had a strategy, a cohesive list of different things that we were going to be doing, and how they would feed into one another, and how they would support each other, and helping people relate to us as a church community, and hopefully come to experience God working in their lives and be encouraged to tell others about that. And of course, that's all gone. That whole lovely, pretty plan. I've still got the whiteboard, it's got everything written on, but essentially that plan for this year is gone. And so my expectations that this is what God was leading us to be doing this year, clearly inappropriate. And I think it's a real value for us to give time now to say, right, God, my expectations or our expectations were completely misplaced for this year. So where are you revealing yourself? And asking God those questions of where God is always seeking to show himself to people, always seeking to reveal himself. Jesus came on that first, Christmas night, but he came so that he can keep on being here with us. So where's he revealing himself now? And on that night he came to those who were perhaps the most vulnerable, perhaps the most overlooked. And how are we meeting the needs of those who are most vulnerable and most overlooked? How are we seeing God being moving and acting in their lives, that we might find him moving and acting in our lives? Ask God. Don't ask me. He knows far more than I do. We'll be back again tomorrow for another reflection, seeing what it is that we need to be learning from the story of the wise men. Goodbye.